Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow is on the show for many, many years. And me and my team sees every moment when we can to provide information to you, to the basic belief that I trust my audience to deserve the best information. In order to get the best information, you always get the professionals to the answer. In my term, there is a crying baby, you bring the crying baby to the mother.
That's right.
And sometimes the mother might be a father. Okay, anyway, in this case, in this show, we're talking about self-defense. It is in the weakening of the event that happens in China, in a case whereby a young man defended himself or his mother in a situation as such and such, blah, 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 which later on we're going to talk. Today, in joining me as the baby to the crying and the father to the crying baby is my good friend, criminal defense lawyer, Justin Rodriguez. So Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me.
Justin belongs to Scott Wormuth Law and Associates.
Yes, the law offices.
It's a big law firm. And by the way, it's a law firm that I've been staying with for sticking with for a long time. And Scott, if you happen to be watching this show, here's my hi to you. All right, okay, very good. Yes, Justin. I believe that you've heard about the China case.
I have.
Right? About a young guy, 22 years old, in a certain situation, when the mother was kind of being molested by a bunch of loan sharks. He kind of, with a knife, in self-defense or defense to the mother, literally killed one of the 11. So, and the intention of this show, this discussion, is not to provide our ways or answers to China. We don't want to poke into others' business. We're talking about our business, right? So, yet, in order to understand the situation, though, what is the common sense in a case like that? Or in a situation like that?
Basically, the law in America, Jack, especially in California, is that if a person is going to use deadly force on you, or maybe someone's going to hurt you or cause some sort of serious bodily injury, I can step in as your friend and protect you from that person. And if they're going to use deadly force, I can use deadly force on them. The law allows that because there's a reason. We're trying to protect your life, and I'm trying to protect your life. Okay. I'm not intending to hurt anyone, but if some crazy person is coming to do you harm, I'm allowed that defense in the law's eyes to be able to come to your defense and help you in that situation. The major distinction here between this example I just gave and maybe other examples or the case in China is that the threat must be immediate. So in other words, someone who's about to attack you right now, maybe someone who has a knife or whatever the case may be, where there's an immediate threat, it's going to happen right now. If the threat is one that's more long-term, maybe conditional, or maybe say the mafia or whoever it might be, some gangsters or thugs are threatening you, but they're nowhere in the room, they're not even in the neighborhood, they're maybe calling you on the phone saying we're going to hurt you. In that case, I'm not allowed that defense. I can't go out and take justice into my own hands and commit a crime to protect you. The reason is the law looks at it as, hey, that threat isn't immediate. It's not going to happen this second. And therefore, in that situation, you have the ability, I have the ability to go to the local police station, to give a police report, to file a report, give details and information where then the police can intervene and come to your protection. They might hire detectives, whatever the case may be. Bottom line is this: the law does not allow people to take the law into their own hands. So they call it vigilantes. And even though there may be a very good reason, maybe these people are bad people and they deserve to be in jail, they deserve to be punished. It's not up to you and I to decide that, because the law looks at it like this: if those people are bad, then they should be brought in court,
to justice,
prosecuted to justice by a jury of their peers, who will then decide their fate. Maybe they go free, maybe they go to jail for 10 years. We don't know what can happen, but that's up to the jury to decide.
Okay.
The real reason is because if the law allowed me to take justice in our own hands, say I go buy a gun, or you go buy a gun just to take the law into their own hands, then we're going back in time. That's like the Wild West, the days of the cowboys, right? And the law knows that in order to have people respect the law, in order to keep the peace, it's important for us.
The law doesn't encourage your self-allowing whatever injustice.
Right.
Right? Okay. Now, you just mentioned about the imminent danger or imminent life threat. What if I witness somebody raping a girl? And there is no relationship between me and the girl. I'm a passerby. So am I entitled to defend her?
Absolutely. You absolutely can step into that situation. The law, there's a term, they call it the Good Samaritan. Like just a person who has
Good
no
Samaritan
relationship.
law.
The law provides a certain amount of protection to you as a good citizen to step in and intervene and to apply the right amount of defense. The only problem I've seen, just in my experience in those types of situations, is then the person who helps becomes part of the scrutiny of the court. In other words, if someone is hitting you just with their fist, and I come with a gun and shoot that person, well, then maybe I'm using what they call excessive force. Maybe I should have just stepped in and stopped.
You elevated.
I elevated the force that's being used. So it's important that whatever threat is being threatened, that it be matched with an equal amount of harm or defense to prevent that harm.
I see.
That it not exceed and elevate the confrontation going on.
So in this situation, if this guy sees a woman being raped, what's the best way for him to do? Go kick him off? Or push him off? Or whatever?
To be honest, Jack, I gotta give the lawyer answer. It depends. In that particular situation that you just provided, it's going to be very sensitive to the facts of that particular assault and confrontation that took place, because the court wants to make sure, the prosecutor wants to make sure that you stepped in and did what you had to do, but that you didn't go above and beyond maybe what should have been done. So bottom line is this: you can absolutely step in and prevent that attack. What's important, though, is the facts and how exactly what happens and how it unfolds to make sure that it didn't go over. You can use excessive force, though, because what's been happening in that situation is a violent felony. And in those types of situations, I think the court allows you a little more latitude to prevent that felony from occurring. But ultimately, a person who steps in to help can find themselves on the other side, and a jury will have to decide whether or not the force that was used was adequate or excessive at that time.
I see.
I would say, though, that many times in situations like that, a prosecutor will look at the facts and say, you know what, that person was doing the right thing. They prevented a rape from occurring, and therefore charges will likely not get filed. It's up to the prosecutor to either file charges or step away and say, well, they did the right thing. So if charges are filed, then a jury will decide. If charges are not filed, that person doesn't have to worry.
So in this particular case, though, this young man not experiencing or viewing any regular woman being raped, being molested. He was viewing his mother, his own mother, being molested, right? Could that be taken into a special consideration at the prosecution end?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. And that's why I just said a while ago, it depends, right? Because those are additional facts that are unique to that situation you just provided, that example. In other words, a jury who's sitting, a jury of 12 of our peers will look at that case and ask themselves, well, if that was my mother, how would I respond? If I saw her being put in that situation, what would I do? And I would probably do something very drastic also to stop that attack from happening. So every case is a fact by fact kind of basis where we have to see exactly what happened, how it happened, who it happened to. And we have to ask those questions to explore what actions may have been what they call reasonable. In the law, that's a big word. You'll see it all over the place. It's what's reasonable. Was it reasonable? Right? Yeah, was it reasonable or not reasonable? And I think in that particular situation, a lot of people, whether they're defending, their mother or their sister or brother or child, they're given a little more latitude on what they can do to come to their defense.
All right. My dear audience, today we have the pleasure of being visited by a very wonderful criminal defense lawyer, Justin Rodriguez. He belongs to Scott Law Office, and what we're trying right now is taking the China case as an example case by not necessarily providing our opinions of what China should do. We'll only use the case as a case. Suppose it happens in the United States. What shall we do with our laws, right? So Justin is trying to shed lights on this issue. I hope this discussion will become a piece of education to our audiences. Later, well, you don't have to experience the guy experienced, but in a situation that unpreventable, so you really know where your rights are. So let's take a very short moment out. When we come back, we'll go still using that case as only a case, not providing a solution to China, but as education to ourselves, applying to our laws. All right? So stay with us, please. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the show. As a matter of fact, the East and West show today, we're doing a discussion. We have the pleasure of being visited by a friend of mine, good friend of mine, a criminal defense lawyer, Justin Rodriguez, of Scott Womath Law Offices, to shed light on the issue, which is not an issue, matter of fact. It's just a hint given by the Chinese case of a young man, 22 years old, killed somebody in defense of his own mother being molested by a bunch of loan sharks, that kind of situation. Once again, like I said in the very beginning, we're not providing solution to China or any hint, whatever, to China. We're just using that case as a case. We're just moving the case, say, if that happens in the United States, what shall we do? What we shall do, what kind of right we shall have. With me today, my friend Justin Rodriguez is shedding light on the issue one by one to the point of this man viewing not a single woman, any other woman, but his own mother being molested. Okay. Now, at that very moment, it was not a situation that he went into the back room or looking into everywhere, going into the kitchen or whatever to find a knife, and there was a fruit knife on the table. He grabs it and pokes it into 4 of the guys.
Right.
In the heat.
The heat of passion.
In the passion. Okay. So with that taken also into consideration, that he is not preparing for revenge, and not revenge. It is a given moment. So our laws, we're just knocking doors on our laws, right? At our law, our court, when applying to our laws, do we consider that as one of the considerations?
That's an excellent question. And that observation is exactly what any just seasoned lawyer would be looking for. That's a very important detail. And in our cases, every criminal case, we want to look at every tiny little detail, every fact, because it could make the difference ultimately in whether a person's found innocent or guilty. That example that you just used is absolutely critical, and here's why. Because as you suggested, it's when the guy just grabs what's next to him to defend his mother, it tends to show that this wasn't something he planned. He didn't have what they call malice aforethought.
I see.
It wasn't something that he planned and was lying in wait and kind of just maybe hiding and prepared. It basically was something that just happened spontaneously. His mother was being attacked. He just grabbed whatever was next to him. It could have been a rock. It could have been a stick. But in this case, it was a type of knife. That will tend to show a jury who might be looking at his particular case that this was something that he didn't have any ill will. He didn't come in there with a gun or buy a gun the day before, basically preparing for that situation.
To revenge.
Right. This was not revenge. This was someone that just acted in the heat of the moment to protect someone that he loves. Something that any of us might do if we were put in that particular situation also. So that's why it's very critical in any type of situation that we look at every tiny little fact so that we can really support our argument. You know, Jack, the thing about criminal law is there's a saying in our criminal justice system. It's you're innocent until proven guilty. Okay. Meaning that if someone's charged, they're innocent, and it's up to the district attorney, the prosecutor, to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that person acted wrongly, that they acted without any justification or self-defense. So it's the burden. They call it a burden of proof. And the reason they call it a burden of proof is because this prosecutor has to carry this burden to the jury and explain why that person should be found guilty. If they can't do that, that person's innocent.
In other words, if somebody accuses me of robbing a bank last night, I'm a burden free, right?
Right.
It is to the prosecutor, whoever, to prove to court I robbed a bank last night.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is their burden.
Absolutely.
I can walk in court burden free, say, hey, I'm here, prove it.
Exactly.
If they can't prove it, they got to let me go.
Case dismissed.
All right, they dismiss the case.
What's also interesting is that it's the level of proof. In criminal court, the law provides the highest burden of proof. In other words, it's like a big wall that the prosecutor has to jump over.
You just said what?
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond reasonable doubt.
That means that if the prosecutor can't cross over that wall, if they can't show that their case is beyond any other reasonable doubt, any other reasonable possibility, that, say in the example you gave, that it was absolutely you that committed that crime, guess what? Case dismissed. They lose, not guilty.
I see.
And that's a very difficult burden.
Can they prosecute again with more proof?
They can. They have the right to maybe refile their case. There are other issues then that come into place, whether it's the statutes have gone by and things of that nature. Generally speaking, though, if they weren't able to succeed the first time, it's quite rare where they'll succeed the second time. Generally they'll need some evidence that they didn't have at their disposal before when the case was initially prosecuted.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. In other words, the law wants to make sure, unless you have an extra proof that this guy's guilty. Other than that, you don't want to just assume this guy's guilty.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of America, is that every person that comes into court, just because you sit down in that court, doesn't mean you're guilty. The law views you as innocent until proven guilty. What I often tell jurors when I'm in court or in trial is that the burden of proof for the prosecutor is like a big bucket of water.
Okay.
And they have to carry that big bucket up to the jury. But every time, as a defense attorney, I poke a hole in that bucket.
The water goes.
The water is reasonable doubt that hits the floor.
Okay.
And if there's one drop of reasonable doubt on the floor, when the trial is over, they have not met their burden. They have not proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt. As my job as a criminal defense attorney for Scott, I poke as many holes in that bucket as I can to make sure that there's not a drop left in it. And that's how we approach cases.
I see. Okay, and that said, by the way, thank you very much. That's kind of quite a lesson to me. When we take every show of this kind of conversation like a classroom, at least I do. That's my privilege.
Oh, so do I.
Thank you. Also, to the extent, in the very particular case, how the mother, by which way the mother was being molested, to a point, a shoe was stuck in her mouth. To a point, a guy's genital were touching her face. Right? Do those details come into consideration for defense or for prosecution?
It comes in for
the extent.
Absolutely. I mean, on all levels it comes in. The prosecutor may use it. The defense attorney certainly would want to use that. The reason is your job as a defense attorney, and even really for a prosecutor.
So now in this case, I want to make sure that you're defending the guy.
Okay, yeah. And
okay, now, do you want to take that into consideration to defend the guy? Because my client was in a situation that is humanly unbearable, something like that.
Absolutely.
Would that be?
You make a good lawyer, Jack.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Humanly unbearable.
Right. And here's the reason is, as a defense attorney in this particular situation you provided, it's my job to have the jury understand, to see it, to feel it in their heart, what that person was going through, so they better understand why that person took action. You really want to have the jury feel it and imagine themselves in that situation so that it makes more sense on how he acted afterwards. The more that they can understand the details, the more that they can understand the threat of harm, the just disgusting and foul and dangerous manner that this woman was being treated, the more likely that they'll understand how her son acted in her defense. It's more likely that they'll say, well, I might have done the same thing if that was my mother. And really that's the beauty, Jack, of our justice system in America, is that we don't type in the facts and have a computer spit out like an ATM the decision. We have a jury of 12 people. Human beings. People from our community, different race, age, ethnicity, so that they can all take their experiences to court, hear the facts of a case, and decide how they might feel. And it allows that human connection to take place so that a particular situation or charge will be better understood by what's being
Obviously,
given.
it's not somebody slam on her face.
Yeah, right? Absolutely
not. For the guy to witness somebody slam on her face, that's one assault.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's one assault, one way. But to see those kind of things that I just described, I even hate to do it a second time. It's kind of like I wouldn't assume if I were there, I would still be breathing.
Right. And that's what a jury needs to understand. They need to understand the immediacy, the emergency of the situation, the threat of harm. I mean, if this woman has a shoe in her, she might suffocate. She can't breathe. She's being assaulted. Something had to be done. The guy didn't have the luxury of dialing up the phone and waiting for the police or other people to intervene. That could take hours in some cases.
You're right.
It is important though for your viewers to understand that in most situations it's not that immediate of a threat. That's a unique example. But most times in the average confrontation, a person is able to, they have someone saying names outside their house. They can call the police, they can call 911, have the police come and intervene. That's the ideal way. But in situations like you provided, there's no time. Something had to be done, and he acted the best way he could.
Okay, very good. My dear friends, today I really take discussion as my opportunity of learning. It's like a classroom already. feels like going to law school. With me is my good friend, Justin Rodriguez, a defense attorney, very famous. You in Southern California, you ask around Justin Rodriguez for defense, criminal defense. He's number one. Let's take a short, very, very short moment now. When we come back, we'll still keep finding the details. And there's a proverb saying the devil's in the details. The devils are in the details,
that's
right?
That's
Once
right.
we got a detail, we got a situation, we got the upper hand over the whole thing, right? So stay with us, please. More detail coming. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to the discussion about a case. The case being the case in China, a guy 22 years old who in self-defense by protecting his mother killed some of the loan sharks. Once again, we're not trying to get our nose into others' business. We're just using that particular case, assuming what if it had happened in the United States, what our laws should provide our people in the situation, their rights, right? With me to answer all of these hard to answer questions, sometimes they're in the gray area, is my friend Justin Rodriguez, a wonderful criminal defense attorney. I'm not advertising for him. I just really feel.
Go ahead, advertise. It's okay, Jack.
I just feel my respect given to him.
Thank you.
For his profession and for his kindness to share. Now, there are details. The details are still going on, right? He poked the guy with the fruit knife. Okay, dabbed, or the guy, right? 4 of them. The guy who died, not killed right away. The guy was bleeding. And he, instead of calling any medical assistance, any emergency, he went on driving his own car, going away to a hospital. And on the way, due to the distance of driving, he bled himself to death. In other words. So is that, or could that? Suppose if that happens in the States, with our law, could that be given into consideration?
It absolutely would be. Whenever you get a case, a criminal case, or charges come about, the stack of papers is that thick sometimes generally because it's a collection. They call it discovery. It's all the police reports. It's all the details that they find out afterwards. Though what you just mentioned right now would be one of the details in the police report that the prosecutor then considers in how they prosecute the case. The question then becomes, did that person intend to kill that person when he stabbed them? Or did he just want to keep him away? And then the law may imply, and it gets very gray about whether or not a person should use that kind of weapon or not. Like you just said a moment ago, nothing is black and white. Nothing is black and white in these types of cases. It's all gray. It's all gray, and it's going to be up to the jury to really try to go through fact by fact, line by line, to see what was reasonable, what wasn't reasonable, and to try to get into the mind of that son. That's what makes defending a case so difficult sometimes. And because as your job as a defense attorney is to help the jury get inside the mind of that person. It's very difficult
to think in his shoes, right?
Right. What was his intent? What was he thinking? How did he act? Did he act reasonably? Those are questions that we don't wear on our sleeve, right? How do you feel? You may be smiling, but you feel a different way. And so how a person acts really depends on also what they were thinking at the time. Just another quick little lesson they'll teach you in law school. There's 2 parts of a crime. 2 parts must be together at the same time for a crime to be charged against you. It's called an actus rea and a mens rea. That's Latin for basically means there's a criminal act and a criminal mind that must come together simultaneously to have a charge brought against you. A person may commit a criminal act, but if they didn't have criminal intent in their mind, no mindset, no criminal mind, then there can't be a charge brought, or that person should be found not guilty.
I see.
That's my job as the criminal defense attorney to say, hey, maybe this son did X, Y, Z. That looks very bad, the act. But his criminal mind, he did not have criminal intent to hurt someone. He was trying to protect his mother. He had a justification. That justification was that he was not only defending his mother, but I would even argue, as his defense attorney, he was protecting himself. He walks into a room, 4 other men committing this violent felony. He's not only afraid for his mother, he's afraid for his own safety as well.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you really have to explore every possible defense that can come about to protect your client the best way possible.
Okay. There's other area or another perspective, right? In between self-defense to prevent or to go against your imminent danger, bodily danger, and the defense of your dignity as a man, right? Yeah. So where does the law stand? For example, if somebody raping a woman is one thing,
right?
You and the justice, right? If somebody raping my girlfriend, it's you and my dignity, something like that. Even raping, right?
Regardless of who that person was that was, say, raped, for example, the law will allow for someone to come to their defense. It's not just dignity, it's that person is being or suffering a violent felony, a heinous act, right, of being raped. So the law will allow someone to intervene to come to the protection of that person. Now, let's take an example of, like you just said, dignity. If someone out of disrespect, say for me, blows cigar smoke in my face because they don't like me, well, the law doesn't allow me to pull out a gun and shoot that person. The law doesn't even really allow me to do anything violent to that person. Even though my dignity, my pride may have been hurt, I have to act in a way that's proportional to what they did to me.
Punch him in the face.
Well, that may be considered excessive. And you know, in those types of situations, a lot of times, unfortunately, and it's not easy for me, I know it's not easy for you, hey, it's not easy for anybody. A lot of times, and I tell my clients, it's not the easiest thing to do, but in those situations, sometimes you really got to just walk away because getting involved in a fight, something can escalate. You know, someone pulls out a gun, someone grabs a beer bottle and hits you in the head. A friend of theirs jumps in. It always escalates, and it's difficult. It's not easy for guys like us, Jack, but sometimes the best thing for us to do, even if our dignity is hurt, is to walk away because you don't want to make matters worse.
So in this guy's situation, this poor guy, when he sees what's happening to his mother, right? I believe that not only his mother is hurt, his dignity is hurt too, at that very moment. So, like you said, he even deserves his own defense. And how about defending his dignity?
The law is not, unfortunately, the law is not very forgiving for people to forgive or to act based on their dignity. I think in certain cultures, dignity is something that's valued very highly, and it should be, to be honest. I have a traditional view of that as well.
I see.
But the problem is, many different people have different levels of dignity, right? And so it's very difficult for the law to base defense or to base its justifications on a person's dignity because it's such a difficult thing to measure. What you get offended by may be something I don't get offended by. Or what I get offended by may be something you don't get offended by. So it varies, and it's very difficult to put that into law. That's why the law in this particular case would prioritize not dignity, but the actual physical harm that this person was going to suffer. That is far more important in the eyes of the law that when considering whether or not to file criminal charges. I think it would be considered by a jury, and it may be something that everyone thinks about, but I wouldn't say it's the number one issue.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for that very thorough statement. In doing my homework, I came across two words. Number one, the word vigilante. Number two, retributive. How do you retributive or retributive?
Right.
So, are they talking about the same thing?
I view it. I think people will look at it differently. To me, they're essentially one and the same. And here's why. Because a vigilante is someone who takes law in their own hands. And why do they take law into their own hands? Because they want retribution.
Retribution.
They want to get even with a person for what they did. And that's why the law really tries to discourage vigilantes, because as soon as people start taking law into their own hands, problems get worse and worse and worse. Generally, people get hurt. Generally, violence escalates. An argument may escalate. That's why we have police officers. That's why we have the courts. That's why we have a system of laws in place. Because if we don't, really, that's the basis of society. That's the basis of civilization.
I see.
If we don't, then everybody's going to go down the street trying to take law into their own hands, and it'll be chaos, right? So it's really the goal of law and civilization.
The law doesn't encourage that.
Absolutely not. It's not very forgiving.
Very good, confirmed. My dear audience, it's a wonderful education here we're talking about with my friend Justin Rodriguez, wonderful attorney, defense lawyer. We are learning quite a bit using the China case of the 22-year-old Yu Huan, for example. Just a case, right? We're not talking about providing any recommendation, whatever, influences or interferences to China, to the case. We're talking about what if it happened here. By providing our laws, we see if our audiences or whoever unfortunately gets involved into a situation like that, what does the law provide you as your right? Right. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the discussion about something that we never think we will get into, but as a knowledge, you better know. All right. Like in my case, I would never consider myself any day at any given moment or situation consider myself a criminal, but to know some criminal basic ABCs are quite good, right? Using the China case, the 22-year-old son, Yu Huan, for example, we're trying to take that as a case which, suppose if it happens in China, in the United States, what shall our laws provide us, right? With the friend, Justin Rodriguez, we're getting lots of professional answers. Thank you for that. I believe you went to school for that, right?
Oh yeah,
you paid a very high tuition for that, right?
I read a lot of books.
We got it for free.
Hey, that's what friends are for. That's what friends are for. Yeah, of course.
A friend in need.
That's right.
Put it that way, right? Now, of course, in talking about criminal laws, we are not always talking about killing people.
Right.
Right. Sometimes you have an argument in the house with your wife or your partner or your girlfriend or whoever. She picks the phone, and the cops come in, and you're the one supposed to wear handcuffs. And in lawyer's eye, in defense lawyer's eye, what is the criminality? And what is the legality? And what kind of right do we have? Do men have? Mm-hmm. Believe me, I'm not asking this for nothing. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who lately got into a situation like this. What happened was that the one dinner, they were quote unquote happy. They decided to drink some wine.
That's what happens.
Okay, they cracked open a bottle of wine. They started talking. To a certain point, they started arguing. And to a certain point into the argument, she picked up the phone, called the cops. And the cops came and handcuffed him, got him arrested. And then the lady tries everywhere getting for a criminal attorney, defense attorney. Oh, that night I almost called you.
Oh, yeah.
Because she called me.
Right.
I said, it's too late. I really hate to bother my friend.
You can call me anytime, Jack. It's okay. So,
for criminal defense. Right? I mean, the lady herself. She said, I didn't even mean it. I didn't even understand the system. She doesn't speak the language. Okay, so. Question.
Well, you've touched on a very common issue that is in our community, and I see it.
Devastating.
It's devastating, and a lot of times, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes, like you just said, it was a big misunderstanding, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. It really goes the whole spectrum when it comes to domestic violence. Mm-hmm. Domestic violence is a very serious charge. There are different levels of domestic violence, but basically it's anytime a confrontation escalates to the point of an actual contact or harm being committed between, it could be brothers and brothers, mothers and sons, fathers and sons. Example you gave, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, everybody who lives together in a domestic setting can suffer or be charged with domestic violence. Now, the big issue then becomes, like we just said a moment ago, the devil's in the details, right? In the example you just gave, there was no physical confrontation, no harm that was done. It was an argument. And to a certain extent, we're allowed free speech in this country. People can argue, they can debate, they can even call each other names. But that doesn't rise to the level of a crime. Sometimes, though, what happens is if someone calls, the police show up, sometimes the police officers don't know what happened. They see someone crying, they see everyone is angry.
The police came, she was crying.
What happens, they may arrest someone to take them away just to allow things to calm down, to let everybody have a little space, and to let the prosecutor figure out if something bad happened or not. Other times, you'll see where, there's a contact, a slap, a scratch, a bite mark. I mean, every kind of physical harm can take place also. The law views those very seriously. And so it's really a fact-by-fact, case-by-case basis, Jack. But in the minor situations like that, I would just say, without knowing more, that charge would probably not even get filed. If it did, it would probably get dismissed. The cases that are stronger, where there's actual injuries, where a police officer can take a picture of the person, where there's scratches or a bruised eye, blood, things of that nature are the ones that tend to go forward. And I'll tell you this, you'll be surprised how many cases it's not just the man against the woman. Sometimes it's the woman against the man.
Oh my God, I'm so happy that you mentioned that.
And sometimes the woman gets pulled away by handcuffs. So it really depends on who's causing the harm.
And there's a third sometime. Many, many years ago, I knew this lady. And there was one conversation that totally got me upset. It was a dinner or something, 3 or 4 people together. She kind of flaunted herself about what she did. I said to him, okay, get down on your knees, okay? Pick up the phone, okay? I'll scratch. I will scratch. You get down on your knees, and this is the phone. The guy, boom, bent down on the knees because the scratch will get him in jail. See, that's how they abuse the law system, the system. And from that, hearing that conversation, I never saw her again.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need that kind of person on my list of friends. No, never.
Absolutely. And
dirty garbage.
It's a very dirty, underhanded thing. And anybody who commits something like that, trying to frame their boyfriend or trying to frame their girlfriend, scratching themselves or doing something of that nature, it is what they call abusive process, malicious prosecution, filing a false police report, and they can be charged with those criminal charges.
To get themselves in jail.
To get themselves in jail. And believe it or not, those situations don't happen all the time, but they do happen. And the prosecutor, for the most part, sees so many cases, they can get a good idea of whether or not this person is lying or telling the truth. They take a lot of things into consideration. For example, has this couple had any other arguments or domestic violence before? Does this person have a criminal history? What were the injuries like? Who had the scratch marks? How were they taken? And there's the evidence in the case that will be analyzed.
And my friend called me in jail. He called me brother. Hey, brother, you have cash on hand. I said, how much? He said, $3,000. I said, who the hell keeps the $3,000 in cash at home, right? I said, what happened? I'm inside.
Yeah.
So
it happens. It happens.
So that happened. So as man, as husband, or as men part, probably that's why we're called the worst half. Because we're the worst half, right?
Well, I know I'm definitely, my wife is the better half, I have to say, but the truth of the matter is this, and I would tell this to any couple, any relatives or family, if you're getting in an argument, especially if there's a little alcohol, like a wine.
Like my friend's case, yes.
Get your, you get your phone and you grab a cigarette or you do whatever you have to do and you take a walk outside to cool down and get away from that person.
Go away.
You don't want the argument to escalate. Many times, I would say probably 90% of the time in domestic violence charges, alcohol is involved because people are emotionally maybe thrown off by the alcohol and they react in a way that they normally soberly wouldn't act, right? So in those types of situations, the best thing to do is just remove yourself from the conversation, take a walk around the block, go to your next door neighbors, go have a cigarette.
Or go to a movie.
Go to a movie, go grab yourself some ice cream, whatever it is, get away from the situation because it's obviously an argument that's going the wrong direction. And you don't want to keep it going down that path, right? So the best thing to do is avoid it.
And there is another saying with the new law, whatever, I don't know. I've never seen it in black and white. Say language abuse.
Oh, right.
Language violence.
There's something,
is there a term like that?
It's called verbal abuse.
Verbal abuse,
verbal abuse. And it can be a part of a charge. Even, for example, there's something what they call criminal threats. If someone says, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to murder you, or something of that level, that's actually a felony. And it's a very serious felony. So people's words have an effect. And the law allows us freedom of speech, but within reason. There's that old example, you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. The reason is because people could get hurt if you're trying to escape the theater. So we have constitutional freedoms, Jack, but all of them have certain restraints. And they have restraints because sometimes in those situations, verbal abuse, criminal threats, it can take words too far. Someone can actually get hurt. Certainly in the case of a child, it's considered a form of child abuse if a parent's always yelling and saying mean things to their children. So it all depends. It's a case-by-case basis, but there's lots of gray.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We're way over time, but I really feel that well, we deserve it.
Yeah, it was time
good.
well spent. Time well spent.
And if we say that learning from the criminal cases of the previous case are necessary, we're talking about this last segment, especially necessary because those are not killing people.
Oh, yeah.
Those are small things that happen
every day,
in the house,
every day,
that probably can kill you, right?
That's right.
So thank you for that. Okay.
Anytime.
And I let my friend know that probably I should have her call you. All right.
Anytime. You know, you have my number. You have my number.
Somebody. Okay, very good. Okay, my dear audience, thank you very much, and I wish my friend good luck.
Thank you, Jack.
And to Justin, thank you very, very so much for coming here, for shedding light on the issue, and for those you paid tuitions for.
Hey, well, hey.
Very good.
Anytime, Jack.
All right, anytime. You heard that? Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.